Ever thought that you are an 8-circle magician? A being so powerful that you can kill dozens of skilled swordsmen instantly, at once, and yet so weak that your strength can be destroyed by just a cup of poison. And, upon that, the irony is that you drink that poison willingly. Well, not 100% willingly, by the way. Definitely, you have your reason, right? But the point is, what if it does not end here? What if they demand more? Demands like your life. And even you were once the strongest being on the land, you take the orders and just get beheaded. Sounds ridiculous. Yes, it is ridiculous. But how will the story continue if you die? So let's use some magic. Not just ordinary magic. It's dark magic to bring back the mage. But we all know, when a newbie tries something, it always goes wrong. So, to find out what has happened and what happens next, you will have to watch this video. The story begins with an emperor sitting on his throne. A middle-aged man, Henry Morris, is brought there in handcuffs along with 2 soldiers. The people gather there, looking worried and frightened. Henry wonders whether the poison he drank yesterday has ruined his magic. He thinks that if he had not done that, there would have been more to protect. He clenches his teeth and considers that it is indeed bad. He realizes that a day like this was bound to come eventually. Yet he still trusted his old friend and comrade, Golden Jackson Edward, and considers that this was his mistake. He reflects that the current emperor, Silver Jackson Edward, takes advantage of his father's achievements to rise to power. The high aristocrats see this as a great opportunity, as it is easier to handle a selfish man than a sharp blade. Meanwhile, they individually eliminate troublesome governors and potential rebels by charging them with treason. Henry worries about how it has come to this and thinks that he was sure the emperor was smarter as a child. An aristocrat points at Henry and orders that the criminal be put on his knees. Henry goes down on his knees. The aristocrat states that the traitor charged with high treason is Henry Morris and asks whether, despite being the wisest in the empire, he admits that he was plotting against the imperial family. He declares that although the criminal who plotted should be captured along with his family, because of the great emperor's generosity, he has decided on the crimes of Henry Morris. Henry looks at him in frustration, and everyone becomes frightened at that moment. Henry then yells that his ears will rot if he continues listening to them and tells them to stop blabbering and just kill him already. Emperor Silver Jackson Edward becomes frustrated and orders the soldier to kill him at once. The soldier, holding a sword, moves close to Henry but seems scared. He apologizes to Henry and raises his sword. Henry thinks that even when he is dead, he will never forgive him. With that, the soldier severs his neck. Silver Jackson Edward orders the soldier to throw his body out for the animals to eat. As a result, after 20 years of an ununified power, Henry Morris, the first 8-circle wizard of mankind, dies. Afterwards, Henry, a young boy, opens his eyes and flinches, wondering what has happened. He is sure Behold's sword cut through his neck. He notices a body of hen and a worn-out book in his hand and wonders what it is. Seeing the word necromancy in the book, he realizes that he was involved with necromancy. Then, seeing a mirror, he moves toward it and, looking at himself, wonders whether this is a dream. He pinches his cheek and thinks that this makes no sense, questioning what exactly the previous owner did. He reflects that necromancy is dark magic and wonders where and how the man acquired this magic and what he was doing with it. Looking around and observing the surroundings, he wonders where he is. He concludes that if it is related to necromancy, this must be a place capable of handling black magic. He thinks there seems to be no one here and questions whether he is the owner of this place. He reads the book and understands that they failed, possibly due to a damaged magic book and a lack of magical experience. He considers that this could be a good opportunity for him and that this life might be a blessing in disguise. He remembers that just a while ago, his stomach was burning from poison and that those men looked at him as if he were a monkey in a zoo. He reflects on the humiliation and realizes that he needs information. Based on the room's interior and his clothes, he concludes that he does not appear to have lived a bad life. Observing his body in the mirror, he thinks he was probably not a knight, so perhaps a wizard. He sits and begins to practice magic, reasoning that if he is a wizard, a circle should be drawn on his heart. He tries hard but feels nothing and cannot sense even the basic first circle. He notices that he has no circle and that his body is out of shape, wondering what the previous owner did. He decides that first he will create the circle, then gather information. He reasons that whatever the man did, he must have earned some money from it. He recalls that he was an 8th circle wizard and the Empire's Grandmaster, and concludes that even if this body has no magic, he should still be able to draw the first circle. He sits against Ares and works hard to draw the circle. He tries hard to form a magic circle and finally creates it within his heart. The first circle is complete. He opens his eyes and says that it is good enough, wondering how much time has passed and deciding to leave it like that for now. He thinks about Silver Jackson, noting that he is like a child. He recalls the moment he sits before Silver Jackson Edward, who blackmails him by threatening to kill innocent children if he does not drink the poison. For the sake of the children's safety, he drinks it. The locals who are captured worry about him, and afterward, he begins to vomit blood. Remembering this, he thinks that if only he were a knight, he could have stood against them even with the poison. Magic is effective and superior, but in terms of raw strength, it is not strong enough to deal with a dozen swordmasters at once. That strength, however, can be ruined by a single poison. A wizard's one and only weakness is a fragile body. If he had the body of a high-ranking swordmaster, he could drink many cups of poison and remain fine. He thinks that if he were to die, he would finally acknowledge the knight's strength. In any case, he believes the purpose of this life has now been decided. Later, he leaves the room and notices an attendant sitting on the floor outside, snoring. He mutters that since this person even has an attendant, he must be more than a commoner. The attendant wakes up, notices him, and calls him young master. He yawns, stretches, and stands in front of him. Henry thinks about the attendant's attitude toward his master and decides that something must be said. He asks what the attendant thinks he is doing. The attendant feels it is strange and asks Henry why he is suddenly acting like this and whether he did not get enough sleep. Henry angrily kicks his leg and says that he thinks the attendant did not get enough sleep. The attendant falls to the floor and asks why Henry is doing this. Henry replies that he sees the attendant has not gotten his act together yet. He kicks him in the face again and thinks that he is being ignored by an attendant. The attendant glares at him angrily, and Henry mutters about his attitude. The attendant thinks that this is not the dull young master he knows. He bows and pleads, saying that he has wronged him and asking to be forgiven just once. Henry tells him to raise his head and says that this is the last time he will show mercy, warning that he will not be let off so easily if it happens again. The attendant bows and says that he will keep it in mind. Henry thinks to himself that this should be enough. He then asks the attendant what today's date is. The attendant replies that it is July 6th of the year 20. Henry thinks that only one day has passed and that he is reincarnated a day after his death. He then asks for his own name. The attendant says that he is the young master, Henry Morris. Henry flinches and asks again what he said. The attendant repeats the name and asks if there is a problem. Henry then asks for his father's name. The attendant answers that it is Baron Hans Morris. Hearing this, Henry wonders if fate can really be like this and thinks that having the same name is not bad at all. He recalls that Baron Hans Morris is a veteran of the Unification War and one of the few who survives until the end, becoming a baron after being recognized for his military achievements, a famous baron, placing Henry in a position where he is neither fully noble nor a commoner. Later, in his room, he reads the family history and learns that his blood ties are not much to look at. His father is not greedy. His mother dies while giving birth to Henry, and the eldest son lacks talent or will and seems far from achieving anything. If there is someone close to success, it is the head of the family, Mrs. Morris, and Henry's younger half-brother, Kevin Morris. He mutters that this must be why Kevin becomes involved with dark magic. The illegitimate child is better than the heir. He thinks that he is not sure where Kevin gets all those magic tools from, but that it is a foolish decision. He concludes that he has gathered enough information. This family has no wealth, no talent, and no connections, yet it can be a fresh start. He recalls that it is the same as before, when in the small nation that later disappears, Mumbattum, he and Golden Jackson start with bare hands and create the present empire. He decides to first practice magic with this body. He has 5 hours before dawn and plans to make as many circles as he can. He is sure there will be much to do when the sun rises and thinks it would be best to get the annoying tasks out of the way first. The next morning, sun rays enter his room. He opens his eyes, drenched in sweat and completely exhausted. He confirms that the magic circle has been formed and thinks that he is done for now, noting that this time he manages to reach 3 circles. The attendant enters carrying a bucket of water. He asks whether the young master did not sleep and says that he has brought water for him to wash up, asking why he is sweating so much. He offers to prepare more water for him to clean himself. Henry replies that there is no need and that he will get ready by himself, telling him to wait outside. The attendant agrees, closes the door behind him, and mutters that he knew something was different. Henry cleans himself using magic, looks refreshed, and says that it is much better now. He thinks that for now this will be difficult, and although he wants to devote himself to the fourth circle immediately, the amount of magic required for it varies, so he cannot do anything about it and must pause his training for the moment. He opens the cupboard and notices that the clothes all look almost the same. He picks an outfit, saying that there is nothing he can do. Later, he comes out fully dressed and tells the attendant that he is hungry, ordering him to show him where he can find food right away. The attendant agrees and leads him to the dining table. The Morris family is sitting around it. He recognizes the owner of the house, Baron Hans Morris, and sees on the other side the concubine and her son. He mutters that, including himself, there are 4 members in the family, and that it seems true that Henry's mother has died. He joins them, and Baron Hans asks whether everyone slept well and tells them to start eating. As they eat, Henry looks at the food and thinks that although they are not the richest family, they probably earn a decent amount. It is not as good as before, but it is still acceptable. Kevin eats recklessly, and Henry feels annoyed, thinking that it is unbecoming of a future baron and gives him a bad feeling. He tells Kevin that it would be nice if he ate more quietly and that they should behave like gentlemen. Kevin starts laughing, letting food fall from his mouth and scatter around. He tells him to just eat the way they normally do and asks why he suddenly wants to behave like a gentleman, saying that it is not like him. Henry stops eating and thinks that he is losing his appetite, but decides to be patient. Hans then asks whether they have decided who is going to enroll in the Swordsman Academy. Henry wonders about the academy and recalls that there is such a place, thinking that it is not a bad idea. He thinks that if he follows the instructions until graduation, he could become a fully fledged knight and his body would change completely. However, he also thinks that with this method, the time needed to get revenge on the emperor would be longer. It would be better and more efficient to continue forming circles, as it would not take as many years as mastering swordsmanship. Kevin replies to his father that there is no need for discussion, and that someone like him would be better suited to attend the academy. Hans says that he has a point, but that it is also important to hear what Henry has to say. Kevin mockingly says that there is no use in listening, claiming that with Henry's personality, he would not be able to do anything at the academy, that he would be too flustered and end up doing nothing like a fool, and that Henry has always been like that. Henry asks in frustration whether he would do nothing like a fool. Kevin asks if he says something wrong and adds that Henry does not even have the guts to spar with him, which is why it would be better for him to go, saying that he thinks he is more cut out for something like that. Hans tells Kevin that his words are a little harsh, but that he is not completely wrong. He then asks Henry what he thinks about it. Henry replies that he has changed his mind and says that it would be better for Kevin to attend the academy, rather than for an illegitimate child to keep the dignity of the family. Kevin becomes furious and slams his fists on the table. Henry says that his reason for not sparring with him is not because he lacks guts, but because Kevin's skills cannot even compare to his, and that he feels bad about embarrassing him. They are all shocked at first and then start laughing. Kevin, while laughing, says that Henry is going a little too far with the jokes. Henry thinks that both his attendant and his family have ignored him many times already. Hans tells Henry that, as Kevin says, he is overdoing his jokes and asks why he is suddenly acting like this. Henry replies that it is exactly as he says and suggests that if Kevin is that confident, they should have a match. Hans asks whether Henry will really be okay if he says it like that. Henry confidently replies that he will, and adds that if Hans's morning schedule is not too busy, he would like him to attend. Hans says that if he is sure, then it is fine, and tells both of them to head to the training ground. Henry looks at Kevin, who is still laughing, and thinks that he will teach him a lesson. Later, they all gather at the training ground and stand facing each other. Kevin throws his sword toward Henry and asks him to take it. Henry grabs it and swings it, thinking that the wooden sword weighs almost the same as a real sword and that it is good enough. The attendant notices Henry and thinks that the look in his eyes has changed, and wonders whether he really thinks he can beat young Master Kevin. Hans tells them that by the rules, the loser is the one who surrenders first. But since they are brothers, they do not have to go that far. He then announces that the duel will now begin. Kevin says that he will go easy on Henry. Henry tells him to do that and hits his feet on the ground to gather magic. His muscle strength, agility, and reflexes increase. He notices that his defensive magic may not be as effective as it was in his past life, but it should be enough to punish a child like Kevin. He then leaps toward Kevin and begins to strike him. Kevin flinches at that moment but manages to block his strike with his sword. Everyone is shocked at the sight. Henry then grabs Kevin by the neck, kicks his feet, and throws him to the ground. He begins striking him with his sword, thinking that he has to end this quickly. Kevin takes a hit on his shoulder. Henry says that if he blocks like that, he will break his bones and start beating him. The concubine tells Hans to stop this now. Hans tells Henry to stop and asks if he is going to kill him. Henry stops and asks Hans if he has something else to say. Hans says that it is okay and that Henry was right. Henry says that he thinks it would be good to have a proper talk tomorrow about who will be admitted into the academy, and for now, he will take his leave as he is tired. The attendant wonders at the unbelievable sight. All the attendants gather and ask how it makes sense and how young Master Henry could beat young Master Kevin, noting that the amount of time they have trained is too different. Koher, Henry's attendant, insists that he saw it and confirms what he is saying. He asks Bolton if he saw it too, reminding him that he was there. Bolton confirms that Koher is telling the truth and that Kevin was completely overpowered. They wonder whether the eldest son has been hiding his strength until now. Meanwhile, Henry sits in the bathtub in his room and thinks that he does not think this body is that bad. Its sensitivity to magic is not bad, and it is also quite built. If the previous owner had been lazy, he would not have been able to do anything. However, being already 20 years old, it would be dangerous if he did not have a foundation, so he will have to start taking measures. He thinks about the fourth circle and decides to try one more time, unsure whether he can restore the magic he lacks using training alone. He then starts practicing magic while sitting in the bathtub. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain in his heart and thinks that, after all, the problem is the amount of magical power he has. He acknowledges that there is an issue. Later, he gives some written items to Koher and asks him to bring them back quickly. Koher asks whether they are herbs and if Henry is hurt somewhere. Henry tells him that he does not need to know the reasons and simply asks him to bring the items. Koher agrees and leaves. Henry thinks that he needs to get the ingredients quickly. He realizes that since he died, his vision for the elixir may have been interrupted. He recalls the mystery elixir, Miracle Blue, which he created during the 7th circle after half a year of research. He thinks that it is one of his greatest achievements because it can increase the aptitude of a wizard. When someone drinks it, it unlocks the maximum magical power existing in that person's body. If lucky, the Miracle Blue can multiply a wizard's magical power many times. While writing down the recipe, he mutters that because he was rushed to execution, he could not even leave behind the recipe. He thinks that in case something unexpected happens, he should write down the recipe for the Miracle Blue. He recalls that no matter how miraculous the elixir is, it has shortcomings. An undiluted solution is a very strong drug and can only be used when the concentration is adjusted according to the drinker's level. He remembers that its principle is to randomly stimulate the heart to increase magical power and that it can only be used once in a lifetime. Therefore, when taken, the concentration must be adjusted as precisely as possible to match the drinker's body, because even one small mistake could cause the heart to explode, resulting in instant death. Koher comes back with the herbs and informs Henry of his return, saying that he is able to acquire most of the requested items, but that there is one he cannot obtain. Henry asks what that one item is. Koher replies that it is the last item on the list, the green crow flower. Henry asks why he cannot get it and whether it is not for sale. Koher answers that the medicinal goods dealer says a large group of bandits has been spotted on the trade route, and that for the past 15 days, merchants have been unable to enter the territory because of that. Henry asks whether his father does not know about this. Koher replies that there have been many attempts to suppress the bandits, but that they are sneaky and suddenly appear and vanish. Henry wonders how incompetent the Baron is if he cannot even take down a few bandits. He then tells Koher to get ready to go out. Koher flinches and asks what he means. Henry replies that he is going to the trade route and tells him to get 2 horses ready and make preparations. Koher worries and says that the young master cannot do that and that going there alone is dangerous, since the bandit group is identified as having more than 30 people. Henry asks what he means by alone and tells him that he is coming with him. He adds that although he does not ask about such things, he needs the green crow flower, and those bandits are preventing him from getting it, so Koher should get ready quickly. Afterward, Koher finishes the preparations and stands holding a weak horse. Henry asks whether there are no other horses. Koher replies that this one is his private horse. Henry says that he will scold the stable boy when he comes back and tells Koher to bring a sword that he can use. Koher asks if there is anything else he needs. Henry replies that if Koher wants to live, he should bring things that will help him survive. Koher agrees, says that he will be back, and leaves. Seeing the condition of the horse, Henry says that it must have gone through a lot, and that if its owner is incompetent, it makes sense. While petting it, he says that its name from now on will be Jade, explaining that it is the name of his horse from his past life. He recalls that after learning teleportation magic, he no longer needed to ride, and that the horse eventually died, and he says that he will fix this one up. He bites his finger and recalls a perfect speed modification technique, one of the military magic techniques passed down to biologists, a secret method to modify a horse. He starts writing spells on the horse's body, thinking that to make a perfect transfer formation, one must be at least a 4th circle wizard, and that since he is not, he has no choice but to lower the level by 1 and try to make it work. He completes the spell and says that he is done. The perfect speed modification technique begins, and the horse starts to be modified and screams in pain. Henry apologizes, saying that he is lacking in many ways and cannot anesthetize it. After a moment, the modification process completes, and the horse becomes healthy and fit. Koher returns and says that he has brought a sword. Henry says that he did a good job and tells him to lead the way. Seeing the horse, Koher asks whether Henry switches horses while he is gone. Henry replies that it is the same one. Koher says that he does not think so, and that it was not like this before. Henry asks whether he is saying that he is lying, and asks again whether it is a different horse from the one he saw earlier. Koher is frightened and shocked at the same time and replies that it is the same horse. Henry then tells him to lead the way, saying that they do not have much time. Koher still cannot believe his eyes and thinks that no matter how much he looks at it, it does not seem to be the same horse. Later, they are ready to set off, and Henry asks Koher whether he has prepared everything he told him to. Koher replies that he has, but adds that if the master and madam find out, they will be in big trouble. Henry says that they are just borrowing the items, so there should be no trouble. Koher hesitates, but, frightened by Henry's glance, says that he understands. Henry tells him to take good care of the items, warning that it would not be good if even one were lost. Then they both leave. On the way, Henry tells Koher to put on more jewelry and to wear 2 earrings as well, saying that they have to attract the bandits. Koher hesitates, says that he has never worn earrings before, but he still puts them on. Henry says that it is good enough and tells him to go on. When they reach a certain point, Henry says that they can slow down from there, explaining that their goal is to become the bandits' target. Koher, still afraid, says that they can still go back and that the rumors about the bandits are very bad. Henry says that he will take care of it and adds that since they are together, it will not be too shameful even if they die in this situation. Seeing Koher's expression, he says that he is joking. Then the bandits appear and completely surround them. Henry mutters that they appear rather quickly, and that although he knows they are good at shadowing, they are more careful than he thinks, and that he cannot even feel their presence. The bandit leader steps forward and asks what they are doing, saying that it feels as if they are asking to be captured and taken away. Henry asks whether he is the leader. The man asks what if he is. Henry says that he must really want gold if the leader comes out himself. The leader replies that no thief would refuse treasure and tells them that if they hand over what they have, the clothes they are wearing, and the horses they are riding, their lives will be spared. Koher asks the young master what they should do, saying that it looks like there are more than 20 of them. Henry tells Koher that everything will be over by the time he wakes up from his nap. Koher does not understand and asks what he means. Henry then strikes his neck with a hand technique, causing him to faint and fall to the ground. Henry dismounts and tells Jade to wait there patiently. The bandit leader smirks and asks what Henry is doing. Henry replies that he makes Coher sleep because he would have been a bother. The leader asks whether he plans to take all of them by himself and orders his men to kill him. Henry counts them and asks whether there are only 25 of them. The bandit leader tells him that paying attention to such things when about to die means he is crazy. Henry replies that they will see who the crazy one really is. With a snap of his fingers, Henry places a jelly-like material over their heads, completely blocking their mouths. He says that he does not need to dirty his hands just to deal with a few bandits. With that material, they all collapse. The bandit leader struggles to free himself. Henry then gathers fire in his hand. The bandit leader is shocked when he sees it. Henry throws the fire, and it moves behind the leader, burning the forest. The bandit leader cries and admits defeat. Henry tells him that if he sees their faces around there again, they will not make it out alive. Later, Coher wakes up in distress and asks what happened to the bandits. Henry replies that he thinks they all ran away. He mounts the horse and tells Coher to make sure nothing is forgotten, and says that they should go back. When they return, Coher puts all the jewelry into a bag and says that he will go and return everything. Henry tells him not to lose anything and not to steal any of it. Coher says that he will not. Henry then goes to return the horse and asks the stableman for permission to take a look at the stables. The stableman agrees. Meanwhile, Kevin regains consciousness and asks his mother what happened. He remembers everything and asks whether he really loses. His mother scolds him, asking what kind of training he has been doing to be so easily defeated by someone like Henry, saying that it makes her very angry. Kevin feels ashamed and murmurs that it cannot be true and that there is no way it could happen. He says that his lazy brother, who never misses a day of training, winning against him is impossible. He clenches his teeth in frustration and repeats that it is impossible. Henry goes into the horse farm and, upon seeing a horse, asks the stableman whose horse it is. The stableman tells him that it is the Lord's horse and that they watch it with particular care. Seeing another one, Henry asks about that as well. The stableman replies that it is young Master Kevin's horse. Henry mutters that the conditions of those horses are good and wonders why his is the only one in such a state, calling it shameful. He then asks where his own stall is. The stableman hesitantly shows it to him. Seeing its condition, Henry notes that it is completely broken, humid, and damp, and says that it is not being taken care of at all. He tells the stableman that from now on, the horse's name is Jade. He says that he will consider it an honest mistake this time and overlook it, but instructs him to take good care of both the horse and its stall from now on. The stableman agrees and says that he will make sure to take good care of them. As Henry turns to leave, he adds that it goes without saying that the Lord's and Kevin's horses must also be properly cared for. He warns that if next time he comes and finds the condition of any of the horses is not good, there will be consequences. At night, at the dining table, Hans Morris asks Henry if he wants to discuss the duel that occurred that morning and asks for his opinion. Henry, while sipping tea, says that he is okay and asks Mrs. Morris what she thinks. She, frustrated, clenches her teeth and says that her opinion is not important and that they should proceed with the conversation. She adds that she will leave first and exits in frustration. Hans then asks when Henry started learning swordsmanship, noting that he has never shown that side of himself before. Henry says that it was not so much swordsmanship as giving advice to a spoiled younger brother. Hans remarks that the kid now has some humility and asks whether Henry will be the one attending the Swordsman Academy. Henry says that after consideration, he thinks Kevin should be the one to attend the academy. His father, shocked, asks why he suddenly changed his mind. Henry explains that it is a decision he came to after careful consideration following the duel and adds that if the purpose of going to the academy is to learn swordsmanship, Kevin should go since he is the one lacking ability. His father comments that his reasoning has changed since the morning, noting that Henry had previously said Kevin should not go because he was not good enough. Henry replies that he was not thinking clearly at the time and that he wanted to send Kevin there, but had a condition. His father, flinching, asks what the condition is. Henry says that although he is giving up on attending the academy himself, he does not want to waste such a huge opportunity. His father asks what he is suggesting. Henry explains that he just wants to lightly test Kevin and asks that if there are any complaints against him, Kevin should be sent to him. Hans remarks that Henry sounds like a stranger now, but agrees to the plan. Henry thanks his father and adds that, based on rumors he heard, the bandits have disappeared. His father, shocked, asks if he is talking about those bandits. Henry confirms that the merchant said they have not seen the bandits anymore. Hans says that since the weather will be good tomorrow, he will send some people to confirm this. Henry says that if there is nothing else to discuss, he will take his leave. Later, someone knocks on Henry's door, and he asks who it is. Kevin comes in, and Henry asks what he wants. Kevin mumbles that his father tells him to come and talk about the academy. Henry walks closer and says irritably that he does not understand what he is saying and asks whether he really mumbles like a fool. Kevin says no. Henry then asks him to say it again and asks what their father says. Kevin feels scared and wonders whether this is really the brother he knows, and how he can change so much. He then apologizes and calls him brother. Henry asks what he is saying. Kevin replies that he is talking about the times he is rude to him and everything he has done without knowing his place. Henry thinks that Kevin has finally come to his senses and says that he does not know whether Kevin has heard, but he has decided to give up on going to the academy. He explains that although he has given it up, it does not automatically give Kevin a chance, since the reason neither of them can easily enter the academy is the high tuition. He adds that Kevin seems to really want to go, which is why he is giving him a chance, but he has a condition. Kevin excitedly says to just name it and that he will accept any demand. Henry tells him not to make such a big deal about it and asks whether he has ever heard of Burnham. Kevin asks whether he means Burnham in the north. Henry says that he does and explains that he has some business there, but wants Kevin to go instead. He adds that one of Burnham's regional products is the green crow flower, which traders bring there, but that they have trouble because of the recent bandits, so he wants Kevin to go there himself. Kevin asks whether Henry thinks he can do it, and then abruptly agrees, saying that he can certainly do something like that. Henry tells him to wait because he still has something to say. He adds that although it is a product that can be stored for days, he must act quickly in order to get revenge on the imperial family and the nobles as soon as possible. He gives Kevin 6 days and says that he just has to come back within that time. Kevin wonders whether 6 days is enough, since after deducting sleeping hours, it is only enough time to focus on riding a horse. Henry turns and says that if it is too hard, they can forget it. Kevin says that he will do it and that he can do it. In the evening, at the horse farm, the horses are grazing outside. Kevin's horse notices Jade, who is standing to the side while dozing. It moves closer and starts sniffing it. Jade continues to doze and does not notice it. The horse then bites at Jade's stomach. Jade wakes up and kicks it away. It gets up again and kicks Jade in return. Frustrated, Jade faces it again. Kevin approaches the stableman, Vernon, and calls out to him, asking where he is. The old man, Vernon, comes out in a rush and asks what is wrong. Kevin notices his horse lying dead and asks what has happened, saying that Grand must not really be like that and that he must be seeing it wrong. Seeing Grand lying dead, Vernon cannot believe his eyes and says that he does not understand why the horse is in that state. Kevin angrily says that if the stableman does not know, then there is no one else. Vernon bows and begins pleading, saying that this cannot be happening, asking to be spared, and saying that he truly does not know how it happened, and that he is sure the horse was fine until yesterday. Kevin shouts at him to be quiet and orders him to get another horse immediately. He mutters that everything is happening at the worst possible time and asks if there are no other good horses around. He then notices Jade and says that he will take that one. Vernon tries to explain about the horse, but Kevin orders him to be quiet. Kevin grabs the reins, but Jade starts kicking at him. Vernon pushes Kevin aside to protect him. Kevin asks what is wrong with the horse. Vernon tells him to calm down and says that the horse belongs to Master Henry. Kevin, shocked, wonders how it can be Henry's horse, thinking that Henry's horse was dull and weak. Vernon says that regardless of the situation, the horse belongs to Master Henry, and adds that if Kevin urgently needs one, he should ride the emergency horse instead. Kevin thinks of Henry and, in frustration, punches the wall. Later, Kevin sets off on his journey. Seeing him leave, Henry, in his room, says that now all that is left is to wait. He thinks that he needs a strong body that can withstand even the deadliest poison, and that the root of that strength is Auror, the mana of common people. He reflects that it is different from the magic used by stacking circles on one's heart, and that aura is the use of mana throughout the whole body. He thinks that mastering aura is easy if a person pushes themselves to their limit, and that it comes as a realization that aura has been acquired. He recalls that in his past life, his father asked him about learning swordsmanship so that his weak body could become stronger, and he feels annoyed by his useless body now. Later, he goes to the guard's manor and tells Kohar to come and pick him up again when lunch is ready. He thinks that, according to his family tree, there are two sword masters in the Morris family. One is the lord of the mansion, his father, Hans Morris, and the other is the one in charge of the family's security and the manor, the head of the guards, Byrne. He thinks that the head of the guards is a sword expert and wonders whether he should go and see how great he is. As he enters, he notices that no one is there and says that it is quieter than he expected, and wonders if everyone is on duty at the castle wall. A girl notices him and asks if it is the young master. He tells her to forget formalities and asks if she knows where Lord Byrne is at the moment. She says that if he means Lord Byrne, he is currently in the backyard of the guard's post. He acknowledges this and moves to the backyard. Seeing him, Byrne says that if it is not the young master, he asks what brings him to that shabby place. Henry greets him and says that he has come to ask for a favor. Byrne asks what kind of favor it is. Henry says that it is about teaching him swordsmanship. Byrne is shocked on hearing this. Henry asks why he is so surprised and says that he wants to start swordsmanship training starting that day. Byrne says that the young master previously said that there is no meaning behind swordsmanship. Henry says that he has changed his mind and asks whether Byrne can train him or not. Byrne happily says that he is very glad to see the young master finally take an interest in swordsmanship and asks if he is finally preparing to be the successor of the Lord. Henry becomes puzzled and says that it is not exactly that. Byrne says that there is no reason to be embarrassed and asks if he may ask a question. Henry tells him to feel free to ask. Byrne says that he has heard that when Henry is sparring with young Master Kevin, he wins by a landslide, and asks if this is true, and if so, whether Henry learns swordsmanship from somewhere else that he is not aware of. Henry says that it is not like that and that he has decided to learn swordsmanship from now on. Byrne says that it will not be difficult to help him, but thinks that he is not convinced and that he can take his time figuring it out slowly. He then suggests starting with a light spar, explaining that he will teach only the very basics at first, but that after hearing Henry beat young Master Kevin, he cannot grasp Henry's current level. Henry agrees. Later, Henry wears magic armor. Byrne says that he will let Henry attack first. Henry says gladly and jumps at him. Byrne stands still as Henry comes at him. Henry points his sword at Byrne, but Byrne dodges and begins to kick him in the stomach. Henry blocks the knee with his hand. Byrne wonders about Henry's power and thinks that it has to be a coincidence. Byrne then wields his sword, which Henry dodges by bending down. This shocks Byrne, and Henry then lands a strike that Byrne blocks with his sword. Byrne wonders whether the young master's sword is always this heavy and thinks that there may be something he is not aware of, and that he should try pushing him more. He begins to strike seriously, but his strikes are blocked by Henry. Byrne wonders whether Henry is really trying to block that. Henry, huffing, thinks that this may be why Byrne is called the Commander-in-Chief, and that apart from aura mana, Byrne's sheer sword skill is remarkable. He wonders why Byrne is in a rural area when he has such skills. While blocking the strikes, he thinks about whether it is even possible with someone who exhausts so easily. He continues blocking while sweating heavily. Byrne praises him. Henry asks what he means. Byrne asks why Henry has hidden his skills until now. Henry says that he only watches over someone's shoulder and tries to copy them. Byrne mutters that Henry learned that much just by watching someone else's shoulder and thinks that when it comes to sportsmanship, it is not only about movement. He reflects that this shows how much Henry already knows about basic battle senses. Henry says that it is beyond his expectations and adds that if his appearance makes Byrne uncomfortable, he does not have to worry about it, and that since Byrne will be his teacher, speaking informally would not be right. He thinks that Byrne also seems good at reading people. Henry asks Byrne whether the sword he uses is the Imperial swordsmanship. Byrne confirms that it is and says that it is common to learn Imperial swordsmanship. Henry thinks about Golden Jackson and recalls trying to avoid the Imperial swordsmanship, but realizes that no matter where he goes, Imperial swordsmanship is considered basic. He asks Byrne whether the class starts from that day. Byrne says that the title Henry gave him feels awkward, but regardless, the class is not hard at all. He decides to consider that as the first class and asks Henry what he thinks he needs the most right now. Henry says that he thinks it is stamina, because whatever he does, stamina will be an important foundation. Byrne agrees that stamina is correct and says that one needs good stamina to survive until the very end. He then asks whether there was anything in particular that Henry thought was lacking during their spar. Henry says that he lacks everything and feels like a blank piece of paper. Byrne agrees and adds that, to give more detail, in swordsmanship, the foundation would be footwork. Henry wonders about footwork and recalls that Golden Jackson also said the same thing, that everything begins with the feet, but questions whether just footwork can have such a big effect. Byrne notices his doubt and says that from the look on his face, he is not convinced. He throws his sword and says that he will have to show the difference himself. He explains that he will be on the defense and only dodge, and that Henry should continue to attack freely. Henry remarks that Byrne seems to be underestimating him. Byrne says that this is another class. Henry gathers his defensive magic and says he understands and begins to strike. Byrne dodges by moving back. Henry tries many times to land a strike, but Byrne dodges easily. After a while, still struggling to land a strike, Henry finds Byrne appearing behind him. Byrne says that they will stop there. Henry, huffing and exhausted, thinks that even with magic, he is still too slow compared to Byrne. Byrne asks Henry to look at his feet and compare his footprints to Byrne's, asking if he sees the difference. Henry observes the footprints and notices that the range of their actions is different. Byrne confirms this and says that if a circle were drawn on his footprints, they would not go out of range, whereas Henry's footprints are very irregular. Henry asks whether it would not make sense to have irregular footprints if he is the one attacking. Byrne replies that attacking should be done after observing, and that one can only decide where and how to attack after figuring out the opponent's course of action. Henry thinks that even though it is different from magic, there are too many differences. Byrne explains that moving in a circular motion is called the circle step in Imperial swordsmanship. He adds that what Henry needs now is physical strength and footwork, so he will focus on those for a while. Henry says that he understands physical strength, but asks how Byrne will judge his footwork. Byrne remarks that Henry seems to be in a rush and that there is no end to the training. He says that they will do this. If Henry can even lay a hand on him while using proper footwork, then he will start teaching swordsmanship. Henry says that he understands. Henry continues doing exercises, sweating, and collapsing from exhaustion. He uses healing magic, rises again, and resumes training. Seeing him running, Byrne thinks that the most qualified person is truly the most qualified. If Henry is training for physical strength, he focuses on physical strength. If he is training for footwork, he focuses on footwork. Byrne thinks that the Lord would approve. Henry, holding the sword, swings it and thinks that if it were not for that foolish emperor, he could have been doing magic research that he was unable to pursue. As the sun sets, he huffs and remarks that the day has ended. Later, in his room, he starts writing and mutters that he will see how much he wrote yesterday, noting that those aristocrats who slandered him and his allies will all be remembered and added to his kill list. He closes the diary and thinks that it is enough for today's names. He then takes out the map and thinks about the western continent, Eurasia, the empire named by Golden, and remarks on its absurd naming. He decides to go further west today, remembering that in his past life, he hid many treasures and artifacts across the continent, intended to be his legacy like Miracle Blue. Now, having lost everything, he will have to collect them himself. He thinks that he will try to remember as many treasures as possible and mark them on the map. Then the door opens, and Coher comes in. Henry stops him with a hand gesture and asks what it is. Coher says that Master Kevin has returned. Henry wonders why it has only been 5 days, and Kevin has already returned. He rises, turns, and says they should go see him. They go to see him and notice the servants gathered outside his room. Henry asks why everyone is gathered there. One of them tells him that young Master Kevin is in a bad condition. He flinches on hearing this. Another maid says that if he wants to know the details, he has to go inside, adding that Kevin might have run into bandits on his way back. Henry wonders why he has already gotten rid of the bandits on the trade route and thinks that more bandits may have appeared. He then goes inside, and after seeing Kevin's condition, he excuses everyone. Suddenly, the concubine grabs his collar and starts yelling at him, scolding him and saying that because of him, Kevin is in this condition. Henry thinks that it is just as the maid said. He frees himself from her and asks the physician why Kevin is like this. The physician says that he thinks Kevin ran into a group of wild animals. Henry asks why he thinks so. The physician replies that Kevin has no sword wounds and that he found claw and tooth marks, and that the same applies to Kevin's horse. Henry asks how bad it is. The physician replies that Kevin has a lot of accumulated fatigue, that his condition was not good when he departed, and that being on horseback for a long time made it worse. Henry thanks him for the diagnosis and asks if there is anything else that needs healing. The physician says that for now, he has done everything he can. Henry then asks him to move aside and asks Mrs. Morris to do the same. She yells in frustration, saying that it is absurd and asking what else he is trying to do to her son. He then calls Koher, who understands him. Later, alone in the room with Kevin, who slightly opens his eyes, he tries to sit up, but Henry stops him and says that he does not have to get up. Kevin lies back down. Henry mutters that he endured quite a lot. Kevin tells Henry that he brought back the green crow flower he asked for. Henry appreciates him and says that he did well in fulfilling his promise and that he can attend the swordsmanship academy. He then uses sleep magic on him and says that he should rest well and that he will be fine when he wakes up. After Kevin falls asleep, Henry uses healing magic on him and says that although he cannot heal his skin like a priest, he can still treat his fatigue and internal injuries. After healing him, he quietly takes the flower bouquet and thinks that now he has all the ingredients he needs. He then leaves with Koher. At night, in his room, Henry prepares the elixir, muttering that the smell brings back memories and that it has been a long time. He thinks that even though it was a medicine made for the annual ritual of the tower's young disciples, other wizards are now surely creating similar elixirs after his death, but that those would be fakes. He notes that after freezing and boiling it several times, the color has changed, and the smell has finally started to change as well. He thinks that now he only has to adjust the concentration to fit his body, and that if he does not, his magic power could explode in his heart. Although he is going to drink it as it is, he thinks that the side effect of a magic explosion is caused by the inability of the drinker to control the effects of the ingested undiluted solution, and that, in the end, it is a matter of ability. He reflects that magic control is not based on the physical body, but on mental strength and sensitivity, and that since he already has experience with 8 magic circles, he should have enough control over the effects of an undiluted miracle blue solution. Still, he cannot help but shake and thinks that theoretically it should be perfect. He then begins to drink it. After drinking it, he puts back the bowl and says that it tastes fishy. Suddenly, his whole body becomes so hot that it feels as if it will melt. Heat is released from his body, and he sweats heavily. He then sits on the floor and starts meditating to create the circle. After a while, the heat is still being generated, and the circle starts forming. He says that this is the strength he wanted and asks to be given more. While awakening, he wonders that compared to the pain he felt when awakening the 8th circle, this amount of pressure is nothing. As the circle generates, he mutters that a circle seems to be emerging and finds it unbelievable, questioning how this is happening and whether 2 gates have opened. He realizes that a 5th ring has been made from the 4th one and thinks that he did not expect the miracle blue solution to work so well. He notes that with the 5th circle, he has already become a sorcerer. He reflects that the 5th circle domain is one that some cannot achieve even after training their whole lives. He recalls that at the Magic Tower, wizards who reach the 5th circle are not called wizards but sorcerers, and that sorcerers possess power greater than 100 soldiers combined and authority equivalent to knights. He wonders whether he can form another ring, but concludes that the formation of 2 rings seems to be the end, and that starting from the 6th circle would require much more concentration. He sniffs his clothes and notices that they smell terrible, wondering what the smell is and whether it is coming from him. He changes his clothes and notices dirty patches all over them, realizing that they are not simple sweat stains. Despite the suit having been freshly laundered with clean magic, it looks as though it has not been washed for years. Looking at himself in the mirror, he notices his modified body and realizes that it has awakened. He reflects that awakening is a phenomenon that only occurs to those who deal with magic. where the magic in one's body becomes concentrated beyond its limit, and the body evolves to receive more magic. He notes that although the evolution differs for each person, the skeleton often becomes more refined and muscle growth increases, resulting in a stronger body. He realizes that the waste expelled from his body during awakening causes the filth on his clothes. He cleans himself with magic and says that he does not need to be beaten up for strength training for a while. Kohir then comes in and says that breakfast is ready. Kohir is shocked upon seeing him and mutters that the young master is now taller than him. While following him, Kohir wonders what has happened, thinking that Henry used to have a boyish image with a small body, yet now has changed into a strong young man within one night, and wonders whether it is because of the ingredients he prepared before. As he comes to the dining table, everyone wonders what has happened to him. His father asks what has happened to him and why his body has become bigger. Henry replies that he does not know himself and that he wakes up like this. Meanwhile, at the training ground, Byrne also wonders and says that all he can say is that it is shocking. Henry says that he thinks the same way. Byrne asks whether it is because he exercised suddenly, but then says that it is impossible for that to make him grow overnight. Henry says that whatever it is not a bad thing, and that thanks to his strength, training will be much easier now. Byrne says that they will need to increase the intensity of the exercises, but that it will be fine to focus on footwork training for now. Later, he climbs onto a cliff and says that, as expected, fresh air is the best, and asks whether they should head down. He then jumps from there, glides down like a bird using a magic feather pole, and lands on the ground. He uses shockwave magic and destroys the cliff top, which shatters into pieces and comes crashing down toward him. Meanwhile, as the cliff is destroyed, two guards flinch and wonder what the noise is and whether lightning has struck. As the cliff shatters into pieces and falls toward him, Henry uses frozen field magic and forms a protective shell around himself. All the rocks fall and freeze. He remains unharmed and says that this is good enough. He then uses shockwaves on the cliff again, and the rocks form like spears and start falling to the ground. While practicing, he tries to protect himself using the circle step technique. After successfully protecting himself from all the spears, he takes a deep breath and says that he should be able to challenge him now. He then approaches Byrne and says that he has come to challenge him. Byrne is shocked and asks whether it is already time. He wonders whether Henry has already mastered the circle step. Byrne says that it is fine and that, as he promised, if Henry manages to land a hit on him, he will begin teaching him immediately. He sets the timer and says that Henry has 3 minutes, and that if he cannot catch him by the time the last grain of sand falls, it will be his defeat. Henry says that he understands. Byrne adds that if Henry fails this time, there will be a punishment waiting for him. Henry agrees and thinks that he will test the effects of the awakening and will not use magic this time. Byrne sets the timer and says that they should begin now. Henry jumps at Byrne and lands a punch, but Byrne dodges it. Henry tries several times to touch him, but Byrne continuously avoids his attacks. As Henry's hand approaches, Byrne grabs his arm, lifts him with one hand, and throws him away. Byrne says that he never said he would not strike him. Henry agrees and moves toward him again. Byrne stops him with one hand and kicks him in the stomach, throwing him far away. Henry thinks that he cannot see any openings. He moves toward Byrne again and begins to strike, but Byrne blocks his attacks with his arm. Henry then notices the timer and says that the time is already up. To his surprise, Byrne lands a punch in his stomach and throws him far away. Henry falls to the ground in pain. Byrne shows him the timer and says that the time is up and that this is Henry's defeat. Byrne tells Henry that he was still pretty amazing and that he did not expect him to achieve such growth in such a short period of time. He adds that starting today, for 10 days, they will double his strength training, and that next time, he should think carefully before deciding to challenge him. Henry feels embarrassed and agrees. Later, lying on his bed in his room, Henry thinks about whether his progress was due to a lack of experience. He reflects that he did not even sleep for a couple of days to practice the circle step. He recalls practicing on a nearby mountain, avoiding a huge number of icicles, and even training his dodging against wild animals. He realizes that this is not the time to practice footwork and that he needs a quicker and easier method. He wonders why Golden created such a technique and suddenly remembers that this footwork was made by Golden. Then he questions who created a more powerful footwork technique than Golden, recalling that it was Sword King Hector Mayer. He remembers that Hector Mayer's footwork was so odd and unusual that even Golden struggled against it. He reflects that Hector Mayer, the last prosecutor of the now vanished kingdom, had won against Golden in a duel, but due to war, he and his allies had no choice but to kill him. Henry thinks it would have been helpful if Hector Mayer had been with them during their plans, and decides he should seek his help. He then takes a book from the library and, reading it, notes that he never thought he would touch black magic in his life. As expected, the book is full of typos, but he is relieved that none of the pages are ripped. He reasons that if it is only like this, he should be able to use a restoration skill. While reading, he considers the sentences: a guillotine that punishes the evil, a truth trial that reveals lies, and a method of witch hunting that can deceive spies. He uses sentence restoration magic to rewrite the characters. The characters begin appearing before him, and he notices the typos being corrected and the damaged letters being restored. He realizes that this is possible because it is his magic. He closes the book and says that it is done, then opens it again and mutters that the restoration goes well. While reading, he thinks that the book says a perfect revival is extremely difficult, and he wonders whether his rebirth is merely a coincidence. He summarizes that the doors to the netherworld can only be opened on days with a full moon, and that to call a specific soul, an item of great sentimental value to that soul, is required. He concludes that the only remaining problem is Hector Mayer's legacy. He draws a circle on the floor and stands on it. He touches the center of the circle and speaks a word, causing the circle to activate and shockwaves to emerge. Someone appears, and Henry happily says that it has been a while. A frog, Scar, the spirit of trade, asks if they have ever met for him to say that. Scar, who is created through people's deepest desires and greed, and is a spirit based on the law of equivalent exchange, questions him. Henry asks during the ritual whether Scar did not see the name that he wrote down. Scar replies that he comes only because he is curious about what kind of person would dare to use that name, and angrily asks who Henry is and how he dares to use it. Henry says that Scar always acts coy, but becomes bold about this, and adds that even when Scar pretends not to, he knows Scar is fond of him. Scar, frustrated, asks what he is talking about. Henry introduces himself and says that he takes on this form because of his situation, but that he is the Henry Morris Scar knows. Scar asks in shock what he is saying and calls it nonsense. Henry asks about the sacrament of Wendragora and whether Scar remembers trading it for the lightning-struck tree. He adds that there is also a trade involving the canine tooth of Phantom and the Piri of Unyo. Scar becomes excited and asks how Henry knows, adding that the man involved has already died. He tells Henry that if he truly is who he claims to be, he should show his magic, saying that that man's magic is unique. Henry smiles and opens his fist to show the magic. Scar recognizes the dragon magic and asks in shock how this is possible, questioning what has happened to him, mentioning the fifth circle and his appearance. Henry says that the story is long and adds that it is nice to see Scar again. Scar says that this is unbelievable, and that even if Henry has been reborn, he cannot believe he has been reborn like this, and asks how Henry can still surprise him even after death. Henry says that he is not surprised to surprise him, and adds that he did not call Scar just to greet him. Scar says that since Henry is an old friend and customer who has been reborn, he should say what he wants. Henry asks whether Scar remembers Sword King Hector Mayer. Scar says that he remembers and identifies him as the one who made Golden fall to his knees. Henry says that since Scar remembers, it is easy to explain, and states that he now needs Hector Mayer's legacy, asking whether Scar can get it for him. Scar calls it a strange request and asks whether Henry is holding some kind of memorial service. Henry replies that it is similar and asks again if Scar can get it. Scar says that he is created solely for trade and that there is nothing he cannot get, but seeing Henry's situation and that he is at most at the fifth circle, he does not think Henry can provide something of equal value. Henry clenches his teeth and says that it seems Scar is looking down on him. Scar asks Henry whether he has a good idea and warns that he will not go easy on him just because they have not seen each other in a while. Henry replies that this is the best he can do and asks whether it is not enough to interest Scar. Suspecting something, Scar says that it looks like Henry understands and asks whether he shall listen to what Henry has to say, questioning what gives him such confidence. Henry asks whether Scar is not curious about how he revived himself. Scar is shocked when he hears about the revival and admits that he is indeed curious. Henry tells him that it is the king's legacy. Scar responds that it is the same for him and asks whether Henry has ever seen a successful revival before. Henry says no and then says that it is fine, adding that in exchange, he will pay after receiving it. Scar, puzzled, says that he cannot fool Henry and releases some sort of energy from his mouth, which swells. He opens it and produces a ring, holding it and explaining that it is the king's engagement ring, reminding Henry of the engagement to the princess. Henry confirms that if it is the engagement ring, then nothing else is needed. Scar gives it to him. Henry cleans the ring with magic and grabs it. Scar mocks him for acting clean. Henry says that there is still too much saliva and then holds the ring, explaining that it relates to black magic and the secret of resurrection. He says that on the day of his execution, he regained consciousness in a random room and noticed a book of necromancy and a dirty chicken in his hand. He explains that this body was from the previous necromancy, and that although he thinks their attempt failed and the original soul was wasted, he became its replacement. Scar wonders whether that is even possible. Henry says that after completely restoring the necromancy book and reading through it, he realized it was not the same experience he had gone through, and concludes that it was just a strange coincidence. Scar asks further questions, but Henry says that is all, that a kid's mistake brought him back to life, and that is all he knows about resurrection. Scar, frustrated, angrily says that Henry is doing it again. Henry asks what his problem is, saying he was just being honest, and questions whether Scar expected something else. Scar admits that he forgot what kind of person Henry was since it has been a long time. Henry tells him that he should not make a mistake like that. Scar, frustrated, tells him to shut up and comments that even after being reborn, a person's nature cannot change. Henry, with a devilish smirk, says that he has learned something new. Scar spits close to him and disappears. Henry observes that Scar is a cute fellow and, seeing the ring, hopes there are no hard feelings. At night, he still sits in the circle, holding his injured wrist. He places the ring there and drops his blood as well, saying that this should be enough. He casts some magic spells, and the circle activates again, with a strange energy emerging from it. He struggles to hold on and notices a door, recognizing it as the door of the netherworld. It starts opening, and someone appears from it. He recognizes him as Hector Mayer, who appears before him. Hector opens his eyes and remarks that it has been a while since he has smelled this fresh air, and asks where he got that ring. Henry, holding it, says that he had it the whole time and greets him, addressing him as Lord Hector. Hector angrily asks whether they have met, claiming that he has never seen him before. Henry says that they had a pretty intense meeting and introduces himself again as Henry. Hector asks whether he means the old wizard Henry. Henry confirms, and Hector says that he cannot be fooled, insisting that he is nothing like the guy he remembers, and asks why he is impersonating him. Henry explains that it is a long story and that even with all the evidence, Hector still needs an old-fashioned explanation. He tells him that he is indeed Henry and that he experienced death and was later revived through black magic. Hector asks about black magic, noting that Henry is not an ordinary wizard and that he did not know he could handle black magic. Henry clarifies that he did not perform it himself, but that it was a young magician's doing and that this body belongs to him. He adds that the world has changed a lot and that shortly after Hector's death, they achieved the unification of the continents. Hector asks what happened to Henry, and Henry explains that the last few years were not good. They built an empire, and he became a hero, but in the end, he was executed by the hand of Golden Sun. Hector recognizes that Golden Sun must be the current emperor. Henry describes him as an incompetent tyrant. Hector laughs, remarking that it seems his death was in vain if heroes were killed by such a tyrant. Henry clenches his teeth, admitting that he could not sleep from anger and frustration. But now the chance for revenge has come. Hector asks why Henry summoned him, whether it is to join him and help kill the emperor. Henry says that it would be great if he joined him, but he does not currently have the ability to revive him. Hector angrily asks why he summoned him then, questioning whether it is to make fun of him for being resurrected while he has not been. Henry denies this and says that he wants Hector to teach him swordsmanship. Hector is shocked and asks what Henry is talking about, adding that Henry is already dead and telling him to stop joking around, questioning whether he is not a wizard. Henry replies that this body he has taken was born with the blood of a knight, and that he has enough magic, having already reached the stage of a sorcerer. He adds that in this life, he is interested in working with a sword. Hector asks whether the wizard who killed him is now asking him to teach swordsmanship. Henry answers that if Hector needs an apology for what happened in the past, he is willing to apologize. Hector asks what he should apologize for, and Henry says that he is talking about the war. Hector is shocked, then starts laughing, and says that Henry is more emotional than he seems. He adds that they were at war, as Henry said, that he has always been faithful and loyal to the Emperor, and asks why a knight would hate someone for dying on the battlefield. Henry says that he was worried for nothing. Hector then says that wizards have always had a lot of unnecessary worries. He comments on the ring, saying that he did not think Henry was the type to collect trophies. Henry smiles and says that it is not a trophy, and that he prepared it in Hector's honor. Hector says that this makes him laugh and asks whether Henry is sure he is not a poet or bard instead of a wizard. Henry replies that Hector is the one who won over Golden and one of the last prosecutors, which gives him enough reason to honor him. Hector says that Henry seems to have an emotional and romantic side. Henry says that he only says this because Hector is worth that much and reminds him that he is the Sword King. Hector is shocked and says that being called by that name after his death is unexpected, but agrees to listen to Henry's request. However, he adds that he will not teach him for free. Henry says that he already knew Hector would not agree so easily and asks what he wants. Hector says that it is good that Henry caught on quickly. Henry agrees and asks again what Hector wants. Hector says that he wants to live like Henry. Seeing Henry's shocked expression, he explains that he means exactly what he said. He wants to live in this world again. He adds that Henry is an extraordinary wizard who has already experienced resurrection, and that it should be easy for Henry to bring him back as well. Henry says that it would be difficult. Hector becomes angry and says that if that is the case, he is calling off the deal, and adds that Henry is the only one who will lose anything. Henry then turns and says that there is nothing he can do, that he will have to find a different way, and that it has been pleasant while it lasted. Hector is shocked by his behavior. Henry asks whether something is wrong. Hector stops him and says that he should not be like that, adding that he is only asking Henry to revive him as he revived himself. He says that if Henry does that, he will teach him swordsmanship and even help him get revenge on the Emperor. Henry thanks him for the offer, but says that he was revived by chance, and that the most he can do right now is call upon the souls of the deceased in this way. Hector calls this bullshit, and Henry says that, as Hector said, Henry is the only one losing something, so there is no reason for him to lie. He adds that necromancy and resurrection are two different kinds of magic, and that in his present life, he has no knowledge of black magic, so he cannot gamble with Hector's life in this situation. Hector agrees and becomes sad, asking whether there really is no way and saying that if he returns to the netherworld this time, he does not know how much longer he will have to wait in the dark. Henry says that the netherworld is far more horrible than he thought. Hector yells at him and begs him to help, saying that he prayed to God his whole life, but that nothing like God exists, and that after he died, there has only been endless darkness and despair. Henry then suggests a different approach and says that he does not know if it will work. He explains that his resurrection was not complete and that although he has achieved the level of an 8-circle wizard, he has not solved the mystery of resurrection and immortality. He says that black magic could be different and asks whether Hector has ever heard of necromancers. He explains that rumors say necromancers have the power to bring back the dead and make them undead. Hector asks about the undead, and Henry explains that it is the same concept as liches but supposedly different. He says that liches pursue immortality after death and live in restricted territories, and adds that while they may look like liches, they are still humans. He explains simply that they are to wizards what sorcerers are, and that they may be able to bring humans back as the undead. Hector asks whether Henry is telling him to become undead. Henry says that this is only the primary method for now, and that if they find and follow such necromancers, they may gain information about resurrection. He tells Hector to think about it and says that even crawling on the ground would be better than remaining in the dark. Hector agrees and says that being undead would certainly be better than being in the dark, but warns Henry not to forget his promise and says that if Henry breaks it, he will place a curse of death on him as severe as his own. Henry asks what he means by a curse. then says that Hector does not have to worry and that he will make sure to keep his promise. Then Hector's ring begins glowing in Henry's hand. He notices it and wonders what is happening. Hector says that he put a curse on the ring, and since he does not have anything else right now, he felt he had to do it, so Henry should not be too upset about it. Henry wonders about it and says that he will call Hector here every full moon at night and that he will be expecting him. Hector agrees and says that he is giving everything in advance and that there is no need to wait. They can start the training immediately. Henry thinks that this is why black magic is dangerous to work with. He brings Hector outside to the training ground. Hector asks whether Henry is learning imperial swordsmanship during the day and wants to learn his swordsmanship at night. Henry says that it is his only choice. Hector warns that it is going to be tough, since the more Henry learns things like swordsmanship, the more his body becomes accustomed to it. Henry says that he will just have to learn both at the same time. Hector laughs and says that rather than just talking about it, it would be better for Henry to experience it. Hector starts running and tells Henry to follow him and stand in a certain position. Seeing Henry stand, Hector says that he has a good posture, but since he is already familiar with the circle step, this will not be easy. Henry says that he will just have to try to ask what the name of the footwork is. Hector replies that footwork should just be footwork and questions whether it really needs a name. Henry then says that he will call it Hector's step, based on his name. Hector agrees and starts running. Henry, shocked at his speed and struggling to follow, thinks that this footwork is much more irregular compared to the circle step and that it feels as if he is dancing. He resolves that this time, he will make sure to take Burn down. As the sky brightens, Henry, exhausted, falls to the ground. Hector tells him that he should have rested for a bit and remarks that it looks like Henry really wants to kill the Emperor. Henry, huffing, asks what he means. Hector explains that hard work never fails. He may not know about magic, but swordsmanship makes a person stronger the more they practice it. Henry says that magic is the same. Hector then tells him to forget that and asks what he plans on doing after taking down Burn. Henry replies that he will focus on mastering Aura. Hector laughs and says Aura, noting that Henry has only just started taking baby steps, and comments that he is good at making people laugh. Henry insists that once he acquires Aura, he will probably become a